Okay, so this teaching is Chelek Beis Acharon Shel Pesach. And we're gonna have a big discussion over here about gebrukts. So I don't know what you do, what your minhag is, but that's going to be the big discussion. Okay, so what is gebrukts, and what is the worry? What is the custom? So basically, when we bake matzah, especially the handmade shmura matzah that's being hand baked. So of course we want to rush, and but everything, the matzah has come out of the oven by 18 minutes, and the people in the matzah bakery, they work really, really hard to make sure that the matzah is completely 100% baked perfectly. However, there's a tiny doubt that it could be that perhaps a little residue of flour remained on the matzah that wasn't completely 100% baked. And if the matzah comes in contact with water on Pesach, then there's a very small chance that that flour and come in contact with the water, and it could become leavened, and it could become chas v'shalom chametz. So therefore, there's a tradition, there's a custom that we don't let the matzah get wet. So, for example, in our family, we eat matzah on a tablecloth, then we take off the tablecloth and we put a new tablecloth on. As a matter of fact, we put when we set the table, we put 2 tablecloths. Really? Next level. And we eat the matzah, and now the matzah is done, we wrap up the tablecloth, and then we go on with the rest of the meal. If you want a piece of matzah, go eat matzah at a different table. Oh, no, because we don't want the matzah to get wet. We don't want it to get wet with anything. We don't want it to get wet with water. May rice, if it's an avocado that's different, may rice really shouldn't be a problem. But if you use the knife, if you use the knife to cut the avocado, and the knife was a drop wet, and then you have water and may rice, then once you have water involved and fruit juice, then it's even more of a chance that if there was a drop of flour, residue of flour left, then it could become chametz. So therefore, some have the stringency that just matzah and that's it.
So what do you do after, like meal? Put a third tablecloth? How do you protect yourself?
No. So we eat the matzah, then we put the matzah away, and then we eat the rest of the meal.
The meal by Shulchan Aruch, you don't eat matzah?
No. I'm not talking about the seder. By the seder, of course. So after we eat matzah, the matzah comes in a bag or in a napkin, or we eat it in a separate table or eat it away from the table. But whatever it is, we brush all the crumbs away before we bring out Shulchan Aruch. Absolutely,
we're also very, very with my husband. We have certain bags. No, anything that falls on the floor. Garbage.
Yeah, the floor for sure. Anything that falls on the floor, the garbage. Yeah. Okay, so everyone has their chumras on Pesach. Okay, we're specifically going to be talking about this concept of gebrukts, and in Hebrew the term is matzah shruya. Shruya means that it was soaked, matzah that was soaked in water, and if you're making matzah balls, or there's different kinds of things that we could do with the matzah, and this is the discussion that we're going to tackle today. Okay, on Pesach there's a worry that if the matzah didn't bake 100% properly and water comes in contact with the matzah, chametz it could become, which is against the Torah. The Alter Rebbe does say that on the Pesach holiday, if from matzah shruya, which is soaked matzah, a person stays away, blessing will come his way. This is what the Alter Rebbe says. But on Yom Tov's last day, if a person acts in a lenient way, so that the Yom Tov joy he could bring, he won't lose anything. So for 7 days, you're so careful that a drop of water shouldn't touch the matzah, worst thing in the world. And then comes the last day of Pesach, and then the chumrah all of a sudden we're lenient. Not only are we lenient, but we take the matzah and we specifically eat it with every single food that comes to the table. You dip it into everything, into the fish, into the soup. You eat the matzah with everything, and there's no worry or and no problem with soaking matzah on the last day of Pesach. So you find we're being so stringent, and then comes last day of Pesach, and all of a sudden, okay, it's allowed. You go for it, So okay, so but the Alter Rebbe says, if you look at if every single word is so exact, the Alter Rebbe says, if you stay away from matzah shruya, blessing will come your way. But on Yantiv's last day, if you act in a lenient way, then you won't lose anything. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. That's the first Chabad Rebbe. He says you won't lose anything if you're lenient with regards to matzah shruya on the last day of Pesach. But what do we actually see? But on the last day of Pesach, we see that our Rabbeim ate matzah shruya deliberately. Not only did they stop being careful, but they dipped their matzah into every food at the table. So the Alter Rebbe was the first Chabad Rebbe. But then the following Chabad Rabbeim, we see what do they actually do? That it wasn't just like, okay, we're not going to be so careful, but rather they specifically made sure to eat matzah shruya, to soak the matzah into everything, into every food at the table. Since every custom is considered to be like Torah, which is so holy, then what our Rabbeim did is surely a lesson for you and me. Okay, so we said this also last class. A custom minhag Yisrael Torah. A custom is like Torah, and Torah is Melashon Hayra'ah, a lesson. So it's not just, okay, we do this custom, but from the custom, there's a lesson, a life-changing lesson for how to live our lives. Okay. So we're trying to figure out why did the Rabbeim act in this way? So as we usually do, we're going to bring some reasons. I'm going to say, no, it can't be because of that. It can't be because of that, until we actually get to the depth of it. Okay. It can't be that the Rabbeim ate matzah shruya in order to increase in the Yom Tov Simcha, because on Shavuos and Sukkot, we don't find a custom of this kind. Okay. So a whole Pesach, especially if you're a mother, what do you hear? I'm hungry. What could I eat? I'm hungry. I'm sick of potato kugel. What else do you have? So comes the last day of Pesach, and then all of a sudden you could say, guess what, guys? You could have matzah with everything, and then it brings a certain joy. It brings a certain joy that we don't have to be so careful with the matzah, and we could eat it with everything. But that cannot be the reason why the Rabbeim made sure to eat matzah shruya with everything, because if we say, oh, it's to increase the joy, we don't find that the Chabad Rabbeim would eat certain foods on the other Shalosh Regalim, on the other holidays, specifically to increase in joy. So it can't be that is the reason. It has to be something deeper than that. Welcome. Okay. We must also pay attention that the Alter Rebbe only did mention that if we are lenient and eat matzah shruya on Pesach's last day, we won't lose out. But he doesn't speak about a gain of joy that will come our way. The Alter Rebbe, he didn't say, if you eat matzah shruya on the last day of Pesach, then you're going to there'll be an increase in joy. All he says is that you won't lose out. You won't lose anything. So we can't say that the Rabbeim ate matzah shruya to increase joy of the holiday, because the Alter Rebbe doesn't speak about joy at all. He just says, if you're lenient, you won't lose out. He doesn't speak about a kind of a gain. Simcha is a gain. The Alter Rebbe doesn't speak about a gain. He just says you're not going to lose out if you're lenient with matzah shruya on the last day of Pesach. So now again back to the question, back to the original question: why are they like going, above and beyond? Why did our Rabbeim go above and beyond to eat matzah shruya on the last day of Pesach? Okay, we can't make the suggestion that we eat matzah shruya to make a distinction between the last day of Pesach and the previous 7, because they wouldn't soak matzah on every dish just for that reason. You want to say, Acharon Shel Pesach, the 8th day of Pesach, is only observed chutz la'aretz. So to make a distinction between the 7 days of Pesach that are biblical and the last day, so we eat matzah shreya to make a separation between them. But if that was the case, they could have just dipped the matzah shreya into the wine and finished. The emphasis to eat matzah shreya with glory, with in everything, in matzah balls, in every possible matzah brai, and specifically there's a kach in it. It has to be that there's that at the core, there's something here at the core which we want to bring out with regards to matzah shreya, which is making the matzah wet. Okay. The true reason for why the Rabbeim soaked their matzah on every dish was not only because it was the Alter Rebbe's novelty and chiddush, but they dipped more and more because it relates to the last day of Pesach's core. So there are some instances where if a Rebbe makes a chiddush and says something novel, then you specifically want to do it that way. For example, in the Gemara, I don't remember all the details, but there's different opinions of the hadassim that are used on Sukkos. So there's different opinions what a hadas has to be. Do the 3 leaves need to come from the same point, or could you have 2 leaves and then a 3rd leaf on top? There's different opinions. So one of the rabbis said that it's okay to have 2 leaves and a 3rd on top. And then his disciples specifically used that type for hadassim, since it was a chiddush that their rabbi said. They said, okay, we're going to specifically do that. So there's so the reason why we as Hasidim, why we dip matzah into everything and make it wet on the last day of Pesach is not just because the Alter Rebbe said, okay, if you don't have, you could be lenient. So therefore, we're going to say, oh, the Alter Rebbe said it could be lenient, which is a chiddush. Okay, we're going to do it all the way. But rather, there's something at the core of chametz and matzah and Pesach and what's going on here, which the symbolism is so deep, and therefore, once we understand what chametz symbolizes, what matzah symbolizes, what the first day of Pesach symbolizes, what the last day of Pesach symbolizes, what the 7th day of Pesach symbolizes, we're going to understand why the emphasis that for 7 days we keep the matzah far away from water, and we're very, very strict. Comes the 8th day and we party. What's going on? What's the difference? And that's the discussion. Well, in Israel, they only have 7 days.
Right.
So on the 7th, so that's a very good question.
No, in Israel they don't do it because it's only on the 8 days. So if they ever happen the Shabbos, like I think less than Shabbos, so then they get this. But otherwise they don't do it.
Otherwise they don't do it.
No.
But we're going to see something that they do on the 7th day. They do something on the 8th day, which we do on the 8th day, which is the Mashiach Seudah. The Mashiach Seudah, which we're going to speak about later on, that in Chutz La'aretz, that we do on the 8th day, and in Israel they do it on the 7th day. So we're gonna get there.
I am Moroccan, so we also by us we didn't eat shreya only the 7th day. The last day we had special dish with matzah shreya.
You did have a specialist matzah shreya on the 7th day.
Only
Interesting.
the last days of Pesach we had.
Okay, so once we see the Hasidic explanation behind it, we're going to understand why yes and why how we're going to see we're going to have 2 different models. We're going to have a model where you have the 6 days and the 7th. We're going to have a model of 7 days and the 8th. So it all depends on from which perspective, from how you're looking at it. You could make a difference between 7 and 8. You could make a difference between 6 and 7. You can make a difference between the first days of Pesach and the last days of Pesach. There's going to be different ways to look at it. From a general perspective, from a more detailed perspective, and that's where we're headed. Okay. So it's a core issue. There's a core issue here of that we're gonna figure out. The difference between Pesach and Shavuos is known. On Pesach, chametz we don't own. Chametz is completely forbidden, but on Shavuos, bringing 2 loaves of bread is an obligation. So here we see, on Pesach, chametz is bal yirah, bal yimatzeh. You can't see it, you can't own it. Obviously, you can't eat it, you can't benefit from it. It's completely off limits. Comes Shavuos, what's the carbon that was born in the Beis Hamikdash? Shtei halachem, 2 loaves of bread. Just 7 weeks later, it was completely forbidden, is specifically something that not only it's allowed, but it's actually an obligation to bring the bread on Shavuos. Hello.
I need the keys.
I'm
The
so
van died.
sorry. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
All good.
Okay.
You're not joining for the class?
No, I have to go pick up all of our kids.
Thank you for doing that. We can have fun.
Exactly, yeah.
So the van works for about a couple of days and now we're back to square one. Okay, wonderful. Okay, at least you have vacation now. Okay. To arrogance and haughtiness, chametz does compare. It's the source of all sorts of negative traits that appear. On Pesach, when we have just left Egypt, the evil we must flee. From our ego, we must set ourselves free. So what's happening Pesach? What happened Pesach is not just something that happened thousands of years ago. It's very relevant to us today. And we say, "B'chol dar v'dar, chayav adam le'eretz atzim v'kiluhu yatzim mitzrayim." Every single day we have to see ourselves as if we personally left Egypt. So what happened then and what's happening now? What does Mitzrayim mean? Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzar, which means a boundary and a limitation. And at that time, the Jews, we say that there are 50 levels of impurity and 50 levels of holiness. The Jews had already sunk to the 49th level of impurity. And if they would have stayed in Egypt for one more second, they could have never gotten out. That's how low they were. And it says, Barach ha'am, they had to flee, they had to run away. They had to run away from the evil and run away from the impurity. And that's what Pesach, and we have to do that also. We have limitations and we have boundaries and we have an evil inclination. And sometimes we just have to, we have to run away. We have to run away from the ego, from the self. And this is the avodah, this is the service. The service of Pesach is to be a matzah. What's between a matzah and a challah? A challah is all puffy, and a matzah is flat, with humility. A matzah represents taking the ego and breaking it and squishing it and saying no. Yetzer hara says, Yetzer hara says, go on the internet and watch something that's not okay, and Matzah says, no, I'm going to crush the Yetzer hara. I'm going to crush the Yetzer hara. I'm not listening to you. That is the avodah of Matzah. It's crushing, it's breaking, it's saying no to the evil, and it's fleeing from it.
You define humility as recognizing
Say it again. Humility is
that you're more than ego, not the ego.
Humility is letting go of the ego. It's crushing.
So what's in that? How do you define it?
So I go back to Tanya. You have selfless and selfish. The second it's selfish, it's ego, and it's the opposite of holiness. When it's selfless, when you're humble, humility doesn't mean that you're a shaka. Humility means that you are in tune with Hashem's will. Hashem, what do you, it's Hashem. What do you want? Why am I'm here to serve you. It's not about me, my desires. It's being in touch with, it's letting your nefesh alakis, it's letting your godly soul rule, it's letting your godly soul express itself. That's what's in the driver's seat. That's who's leading you. That's true freedom. See, we think that Torah's restrictions, can't do this, you can't do that, but it's freedom, it's freedom to. It's not freedom from. Freedom from is very dangerous. But Hashem took us out of Egypt, so we should be free to serve him. Serving Hashem is when we're truly free, because we're being true to our innermost, deepest self. So the avodah of
Wow. Say that again.
serving Hashem, we think, a person might think it's a burden. If you're walking up a hill and you're walking up a hill and you're carrying a bag and you think it's heavy rocks, you're sweating and you think that it's such a big burden. But if you know that in the bag is diamonds, it's not heavy. So Torah mitzvahs could be seen as it's a burden. I can't do this, I can't do that, there's so many restrictions, but really, it's the greatest gift and protection. And when we're running after the desires of our animal soul, we're never free. We go on vacation, we get this temptation, we submit to this temptation, that temptation, and as soon as it's done, we're looking for more. We're never ever satisfied when we're dealing with the whims of the animal soul. But when we let the godly soul express itself and rule, which is who we really are, and we let our godly soul be free, then we'll truly be happy. Okay.
Back to the mouth.
It's almost like when you said the last part, it was almost like I had to write it down. But it's not about writing it down, it's about like repeating it so it can go into like.
You have to kind of.
To penetrate, and like, oh wow, that makes sense.
That's the limit, yeah.
Freedom, when you said that.
That's the goal, that's the goal.
Ah.
Coming here to
Right.
process and taking it on.
There's a story about ay and ah. What comes first? If the ah comes first, then it ends up being ay.
Right.
If the ay comes first, then it ends up being ah.
I like that. I love that. Oh, I love that. That's a good one.
You jump into the freezing cold mikvah, at least in Russia in those days, and that was ay. You come out and you have a nice warm towel, ah, you know? But if it's the other way around, then it's ah, it's a fleeting enjoyment, but then ay, now I have to pay the price. Yeah, so that's what freedom means. That your neshama is free to serve Hashem, that you're free to be who you really are, to fulfill your mission. That's freedom. Okay. So Pesach is a avodah of a matzah. We're running away from the ego. We're crushing the Yetzer Hara. We're saying no. But it's just the beginning of our service. On the other hand, Shavuos represents achieving the goal of refining the soul. After 7 weeks of counting, we have the power and responsibility to transform the darkness into light and positivity. Okay, so what happens on the second night of Shavuos? We already start counting Sfir Sa'imer. We're going through a seven weeks of refinement. There are 7 character traits: Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. And we spend a week refining each one, and we refine each one how it is in how it includes all the other 7. So the first day we work on Chesed Sheba Chesed, second day Chesed Sheba Gvura, Chesed Sheba Tiferes, Chesed Sheba Netzach, Chesed Sheba Hod, Chesed Sheba Yesod, Chesed Sheba Malchus. And then after 1 week, you have elevated, you have rectified, you have refined the first character trait, and how it is expressed with all the other character traits. That's what happens starting the second night of Pesach. And we're refining ourselves, we're working on ourselves until we get to the point of Shavuos, where Achala, where the ego has been transformed, and you're able to use the ego to serve Hashem. Yes.
Yeah.
We got it.
Nou, de challah is pop.
So ego, if it's used for Hashem, it's a very good thing. When you have Jewish pride, and oh boy, do we need Jewish pride. When we're able to not be bullied by the other nations, that calls for strength and pride. And pride is a good thing, not to cower, and not to have fear, but to have the strength and the pride. We're the Jewish people, and we're God's chosen people. That is very good. So challah in the right time, Shavuos, is amazing. And actually, you're obligated to bring the challah on Shavuos. So there's a time for this, and then there's a time for the strictness and the breaking and the breaking, which is Pesach, but that's just the beginning. Our goal is to get to a place where we're able to transform the ego and use it for Hashem. For example, an animal soul, this is in Tanya, an animal soul is compared to an ox. Ox running around wild could bring a lot of destruction. But what's the goal? If you take a yoke, you put it on the ox, now you could use the ox to plow your field. I know that today we don't, we have machines that do that. But just envision that. An ox is very, very powerful. If you're able to take that power and use it for the good, that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal. So and in so many different relationships you have, is you have a teacher walking into a classroom the first day of school. First day of school, she has to be very, very strict. No one's allowed to get out of their seat. No one's allowed to move. And then slowly, we could have class discussions. We could go on a trip. We could go to the park and play ball. We could become friends. But it's the way you start. The way you start is much more of a strict approach. And then once the students have the respect for the teacher, then there's so much. Then that relationship could flourish and could bloom, and it could be. It's amazing. But you have to start off. As a matzah. Then our goal is to get to the challah. But we have to. And when we get to the challah, when you have the matzah, when you have the humility, when you are direct, when you direct your heart and your mind, and you understand who's boss and what your mission is, and that we're here to serve Hashem. When you have that mindset, then on top of that, to have the Jewish pride and to use to use the animal soul for Hashem, it's fantastic. The power is incredible. What you could achieve, but first you have to have the foundation. Then you could have the skyscraper on top of it. Okay. And once it comes Shavuos, it's not only optional. It becomes an obligation to bring the shtei alechem, to bring the bread. Once you attain this level of matzah, then once you have the ability to deal with the chametz, then you have to. Then you should. Then it's a must to serve Hashem with everything, not just to stay away from things that are forbidden, but to be able to take all the neutral stuff and to use it for Hashem. That is already a whole different ball game. When someone tells you you are not allowed to do whatever it is, you don't have a choice. There's no choice anymore. The choice is taken away from you, and there is no you. And your ego is pretty crushed. That was crazy memory. I was in seminary, And I was in seminary, so I walk into the apartment and we had a achra'it dira, the person in charge of the apartment, and she would make the chart, the you know what all your jobs, what the jobs you have to do to clean the apartment. And I walked in, I was in a really good mood, and you know I said to the person who was making the chart, I said in a joke, I said, you know, give me any job, but please don't give me mopping the floor. And she looked at me and she said, Hani, your job this week is to mop the floor. And I remember how, like, it was very difficult to mop the floor because it was, I didn't have any control. It was forced upon me. It didn't feel very good. But I'm saying, so the control, the ego is crushed. I don't know. But when someone forces you, you think you can't, and you think, I'm going to show you who's in control over here. So the power, when the power is taken away from you and you're forced to do something, right? That's the beginning. But when when all of a sudden, when you're not forced, and I could, then that is a whole nother realm. And that's where it counts. For example, in a relationship, the husband has to take out the garbage. Jewelry and chocolate and flowers. It doesn't say anywhere you must do that. But when you do, because you chose to, that's where you see the beauty of that's where you see the beauty of the relationship. If the woman heard in a certain relationship, it's delegated to make supper every single night. So by making supper, that is what's expected. But when you go beyond that, when you go beyond what's expected, what you must do, and you go the extra mile, that's where you see the beauty of the relationship. Comes Pesach time, you're not allowed to eat chametz. So over there, the choice is taken away, and this is the basic, most basic thing you have to do, and that's the beginning of the service. But then
that force is not a bad. You're using it in a different context.
Say it again.
You're saying it's not a bad thing because comments is taken away. You're forced to be. You're telling us something you put context to being forced. It's not even bad.
So it's the first step, but that's not where it's going to end. That's not going to end. You see, because
you're flipping it. You're using the force like you mop the floor, but this is what you need to do in order to get to where you need.
Yes. So when you need it, so maybe that was her point. When she was 1 year over me, she was saying, "Look, I'm boss here. I'm going to let you know that." So sometimes we need to be put into our place, right?
So you're saying is that we're forced, we can't eat hummus.
We can't eat
Now, what are
hummus.
you gonna do beyond that?
But then
people complain, oh my gosh, it's not me to eat. And
It's not the end. The end is to
there's
do it.
so much, and everything's so fresh, and so that's the way we could take it a step further and enjoy the cooking. You're saying that's what you're saying?
what I'm saying is, up until I learned this class, the last day of Pesach was bittersweet. Once we're already dipping the matzah into everything, like, this is the end, the holiday's winding down, and it was like a little bit sad. But what we're going to learn today is we're going to turn everything around. When you're able to take the matzah and to dip it into the water, you just achieved a higher level. It's not a lower level. You think, oh, it's a leniency, we're going down. Till now, we were so pure and holy, we didn't let the matzah come in contact with everything. Then it comes the 8th day, it was like a downgrade almost. Like, now we could eat matzah with everything.
We're not nervous anymore because flour out, that's gonna be performance.
So it's not because you're opening a new box of matzah on the 8th day of Pesach. It's not in 7 days. The flour can't disappear. Mitzad chametz, nothing changed between the first day and the 8th day, but What did change? The matzah, the actual matzah in the box didn't change. That means if matzah had a drop of flour on it on day 1 or day 8, the matzah didn't change. But what did change? We changed.
I thought we do, I mean, we do, but whatever, Chabad does, we do matzah and water, because there might be some flour. Shouldn't that apply?
It shouldn't apply last day.
Oh, that is it. I did want to keep them out. And some people eat it to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So through understanding the Hasidic perspective, we're going to understand why the 8th day everything's allowed. It's not a downgrade. The fact that Chabad eats shri and other communities eat shri on the 8th day, it's not that we're going down. Oh, we're being, it's a leniency, do whatever you want. But rather, actually, it's an upgrade. It's an upgrade that we're able to take matzah. We're already on the way up to Shavuos. What happened? We had a whole entire week to start rectifying our midas. After 7 days, Chesed, the attribute of Chesed, and Chesed touched each one of the 7 midas. So we already started refining every single one of the midas, all the midas, how they are in the Chesed. And now a week later, we're already on a higher level. So now we don't have to be so strict like the first day of school. We could be a little bit more relaxed. Why? Because we changed. We became more refined. We're not so, the ego is not such a threat to us because we already started taming it. We already did the work. We already did work for a whole week. So now comes the 8th day. And we're able to take, we're not scared in a spiritual level, and therefore it comes out, and in halacha as well, we're going to see in halacha how it comes out as well, that we're not as stringent and scared. Why? Because we're already working on ourselves for a whole week. We already achieved a higher level to eat.
Well, what happens?
Excellent question. So we're skipping ahead of ourselves. Halachically speaking, I'm skipping ahead just to answer your question. Comes the last day of Pesach, and you're having your meal. That's Mashiach. We're having a Mashiach meal, and we're so busy, and we're singing, and we're inspired and sharing stories, talking about Mashiach, and all of a sudden 3 stars come out. Yantif is over. You didn't make Havdalah. You didn't daven Ma'ariv. Yantif is over. You already see 3 stars in the sky. According to Chabad custom, you are permitted to start drinking mashka and eat challah. And then you're gonna bench, and you're gonna say in Yalav Yava, you're gonna speak about Pesach. Not everyone holds that. Mishnah Berurah does not hold that.
My question is, what happens with people that eat the brats? Do they eat something different on that 8th day?
They don't have this community.
No.
That they live their life by.
No, but they still have Pesach, so is there, where you achieve such a level that you can now just.
So for those who are strict with gebraks for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, they're lenient because they had 7 days of Sfiras HaOmer. They rectified, they dealt with a little bit of each of the midas. Now they're on a higher level, and therefore, gebraks, they're not afraid if there's a drop of flour on the matzah, because what does matzah mean? What does challah mean? What does shruya mean? What does water mean? What does chametz mean? We're talking about the spiritual aspect, yes, and that's why the Rabbeim, what do? They specifically took the matzah and dipped it into every single food that came to the table. They were saying, guys, this is a celebration. We just worked hard for a week, and we find ourselves, and now we're a level up. We're not what we were when we came the night of Pesach.
I feel like also
To
when
this-
it comes to the word consistency. Consistency, like we did it, and consistency. So like that's why we are on.
You did it for 7 days, not 6 days. You touched upon each and every one of the 7 attributes. You refined it. Now, what are the games that we play now? I don't know.
Next level.
Next level. Now you're on the next level. Now there's a new, you know,
My question is, there is still a this is the part that you feel like a you feel like a downgrade, like nothing's over, you feel like something, there is a void. So is that maybe the Acharon, maybe, like, maybe like we work towards Pesach, and then it's like, it's over.
but with this perspective, it's not over. With this perspective, it's not over. Pesach was the beginning of the journey.
Right.
And Shavuos is the end. You're driving to Florida, you're driving to Orlando, wherever you're going. You left your house, Pesach, and Yerushalayim, forget about Orlando. We're going to you know, Pesach, you leave your house, and Shavuos is when you get to your destination. So after 1 week, you didn't get there yet. You didn't get you there yet. It was you started your journey, but you're not there yet. You're not there yet. You have so much to look forward to. We're working on ourselves. We started the process. It's the hardest thing is always to start. Comes to Pesach cleaning, right? You look at the mess, but
Get into it,
yeah. So what do the professionals tell you? Set an alarm, set a timer for 15 minutes. That's it, right? Once you start for 15 minutes,
hours.
you know, then the hardest is to pick yourself up and to start. That's always the hardest thing. Pesach is the start of the journey. And if you want to look at the Seder, the 15 steps is also a journey. That's its own, you know, that's its own Kadesh Orchatz. That's also a whole journey. Okay. Okay, I think my phone died. Okay, anyone else have the poem that I could share? I knew it was happening. Thank you so much. Okay, I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, on the second night of Pesach, the Avodah of Matzah does begin through iskafia and bittul. We break the negative impulses and urges within. When Acharon Shel Pesach comes, Acharon Shel Pesach is the last day of Pesach, we already attained the refinement of all the midas when in Chesed they were displayed. Okay, so there's in Tanya, there's word iskafia and ishapcha. Iskafia is the Bachram, they practice this. You serve them the whole meal, comes dessert, you serve your yeshiva boy the dessert, and he says, no, thank you. That's iskafia. Iskafia says, no, I don't need the ice cream. That to say no. Iskafia means to break. You're breaking the animal soul. You're saying no to just to be able to say no. Ishapcha is to elevate it. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate. But in yeshiva when they bring with the bachrim, you know, they say you could eat the hot dog without the ketchup and the mustard and the relish. It's a certain. There's a place for this and a place for that. If you're going to eat the hot dog with the ketchup and the mustard and the relish to serve Hashem, wonderful. But sometimes a person knows himself. He says, you know, I'm eating the ketchup with the hot dog and the mustard and I have all the trimmings because I want to enjoy life. You know, so if a person knows where he is. Sometimes you're still closer to the matzah than the challah. Everyone knows where they are. So there's a concept. There's a concept. I saw it in my grandparents' house. One of, you know, we would go to my grandparents for 4 years, every Shabbos for lunch. I had the privilege of being with my grandparents because it was after Gimel Tammuz. My father would daven late, and my friends would go to the old age home. So I wanted to go with them. So I would go to my grandparents to have Shabbos lunch. And one cousin in particular, whenever he was offered dessert, he would say, no, thank you. He never took the dessert. It was just to say no, to the evil inclination. No, you know, it's a certain way of saying, look, you had the whole meal, a certain control, certain self-control.
So
That's the matzah. Yeah.
How separate.
So sometimes we're on a level of a place of matzah where we say no. I think sometimes a person has to go on a diet and they have to say no to the chocolate cake. That's a skafia. Skafia is saying no. Not always could I transform the cake. Not always. Sometimes you just have to say no. That's a skafia. And his hapcha is the transformation. Okay. although we still have a long way to go to get to the level of Shavuos, when chametz itself can be used for holiness, on Acharon Shel Pesach, we have the capacity to use something that isn't absolutely batal for the service of Hashem only. This very, very much resonates with me because of Tanya. I just learned chapter 7 of Tanya, chapter 6 of Tanya. In this world, we have 5% of stuff that's holy, 5% of stuff that's unholy. 90% is, it's up to you what you're going to do with it. And this is where our relationship with Hashem shines. If you tell me not to eat not kosher food, okay, it's forbidden, it's not a question, I won't do it, fine. But if you want to see the beautiful relationship between us and Hashem, that is when we go to the things that are mundane. And we say, I'm going to use this for a holy purpose. Not where I'm forced. No one's going to force me. No one's going to force me to give the okay, Meiser, I have to give Meiser. But after giving Meiser, no one's going to force me to give another $1 to tzedakah. It's up to you. It's your choice. Optional. And the optional, there you serve Hashem. Ooh, that's another whole, that is where you see the beauty of the relationship. Not where in the don'ts. It's up to you. When you give the choice, and the person says, yes, I want to do that. I want to do that for you. That's where you see the beauty in the relationship. So Pesach, you're forced. And slowly, the teacher is giving the students more control, more of a say. What's a beautiful classroom? You could have Montessori when the kids are learning and growing and doing their own thing. They're not, strapped to their seats, and if they get up, who knows what. That's when the teacher is able to trust the students. The teacher could walk out of the room for a minute and comes back, and the kids are all sitting in their desk and doing what they have to do. Ooh, now you're not running that classroom with as a boot camp, but that's education. When you teach kids how to behave, that even if the teacher walks out of the room for a second, I trust you. I trust you could sit in your seat and do your work. And the same thing is with parents. There are some parents that have to put the candy locked up in a high shelf, and then there's other. Maybe there are other homes where the candy doesn't have to be in the highest shelf, and the children know that they can't just take candy, even if they could reach it.
That's what I see. Two package devices on summer shop, it's like, this is what we have, like.
Yeah. So sometimes, we come to a point where we could trust. Maybe some children we trust more than other children,
Right.
but I'm saying comes a point of trust. That I trust you to do the right thing. And that's ultimately what we want. We don't want to just, hold them by the neck a whole life. We want to educate them, and we want to tell them, I trust you that when you walk out of this house, when you go to a Shabbaton, you go to camp, you go touring, you go to seminary, you go start your own family, I trust you that even when no one's looking, you're doing the right thing. That's chinuch. That's chinuch. So in the beginning, maybe it's with an iron hand, but if it's with an iron hand forever, then the second that the child feels free, they're running.
Kids are trading their parents for whatever in school, because like the mother thinks that they have 2 parents and coffee snacks. No, I want to go to more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so much so we make sure to eat matzah shruya to the extent that it becomes part of the mitzvah of the Yom Tov joy for every man, woman, girl, and boy. So what happens is that once we say, look, we're giving you room to make your own decision over here. We're already allowing you to dip the matzah into the water. At that point, the matzah shruya ends up adding to the mitzvah of simcha. There actually is a gain. Actually, it becomes a gain. Why? Because you did the work. We could trust you now. You're on a higher level now. Okay. Now, this is very interesting. Now we're gonna, so until now we were talking about the beginning of Pesach and specifically the last day of Pesach, Acharon Shel Pesach. Now we're gonna talk about the 7th day of Pesach. What does it actually say in the Torah? Because remember, the 8th day, that's just what we, that's the rabbinic thing that we add. What does it say in the Torah? For 6 days you shall eat matzahs, and on the 7th day shall be atzeres unto Hashem your Lord, the Torah does say. So, biblically, the only thing you have to do is eat matzah on the Seder night. The rest of Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chametz, but you're not obligated. There is no must to eat matzah. How do we know this? Because it says, for 6 days you shall eat matzah, and on the 7th day, it doesn't speak about matzah at all. On the 7th day shall be atzeres unto Hashem. You know what atzeres means? Atzeres means stop. Atzor. Atzor means to stop. What happens is we think that we're the only ones that are sad when Yantif is over. Hashem is also sad. Atzor means stop. Hashem says, this day I want you to stop and let's just enjoy our relationship before you go back to the weekday. We also have Shmini Atzeres, the 8th day. Shmini Atzeres, just stop and let's just focus on our relationship before we need one more day of being together before you go back to the mundane. So Hashem says 6 days you should eat matzah, and the 7th day is Atzeres unto Hashem. So from the 7th day we learn that besides for the Seder night, matzah is optional to eat. Chassidus explains that optional matzah, which stems from the 7th, is a greater feat. So halachically speaking, from this verse that says for 6 days you should eat matzah and the 7th is atzeres, you learn that since it's in the same verse, that matzah is not, you're not obligated to eat matzah on every single one of the other days. Why? Because it doesn't speak about eating matzah on the 7th day. So from the 7th, we learn that all the other 6 days are optional. So the incredible thing is that until we would think what's mandatory, that is a higher level than what's optional. The first night, it's mandatory to eat the matzah. Wow, that's like the highest level. Then the other days, it's optional. You want to eat matzah, fine. You don't want to eat matzah, it's also fine. We think that's a downgrade. But Chassidus says, when something's optional, it's not a downgrade. It's actually an upgrade. You have an option. You could have potatoes, but no, you choose to eat matzah on a different day, even though it's very expensive. Why am I eating matzah? It's optional. It's optional. I want to eat matzah. When I eat the matzah, I want to think about working on my humility. You need more?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
I feel like, let's say in a marriage, it's all about the details. Like, let's say your husband's doing the fire, let's say your favorite fire, that's when you feel love.
Right.
So in the optional, there's extra room for.
I got you, thank you. It's in the details, okay.
It's in the details, absolutely. Just like in a marriage, it's in the details. Yeah, what you're obligated to do, you're obligated to do. That's a no-brainer. But I also felt like, the Seder night, that's the highlight. And once it's optional, you're like, oh, like we're already going downhill. Like the Seder night is the top, and then we're just going downhill from there. But yeah. But if you realize Hashem could have left us all, created the world, left us all in Gan Eden, Adam and Chava will only do the right things, and will be programmed robots and finished. This entire world is all about us choosing. It's optional. Some things are mandatory, but there's a lot of gray, Well, how are you going to spend your Shabbos afternoon? I'm saying, I'm talking about what's mandatory versus what's optional. There are some things that are mandatory, but there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of place, a lot of room. There's a lot of things. Most of the stuff in this world that we come in contact with are
Bringing the flowers, right? Okay. You know, you could just buy the flowers. Exactly, you check it out, it's good. But if you buy your favorite flowers, that's above. You want more.
you know those
It's optional, it doesn't have to.
You have to bring the flowers, that was nice.
Right.
Depends what household. The husband puts a flower, unless it's something special, it's waste of money. $40 bouquet of flowers. Unless it's a special anniversary, but not every Friday. All right, that's it. We go on way of looking.
I've said this before. I've said this before. There was a woman in our community who she had a living will that she wrote that if I pass out or something like that, don't resuscitate me. That was her choice. That was a choice that she made. Anyway, one day something happened, I don't know, and basically she lost consciousness, and no one knew that was her will. And the ambulance came and they resuscitated her, and she and they saved her life. And anyway, so she came to my husband and she said, it's a real story. She came to my husband, she said, why did Hashem give me another chance?
Right.
Oh.
Why did Hashem give me another
That's
chance?
scary.
Maybe your husband wasn't home, I don't know. Why did Hashem give me another chance? Because from what I had said I wanted, they shouldn't have brought me back. And my husband said, you come down here, we all come down here, and our job is to gather flowers and make a bouquet of flowers for Hashem. You had a bouquet of flowers, and your soul was on its way up. And Hashem said, go back down. I want more flowers. I want more flowers. So there are flowers. It's up to you. You have a whole bunch of flowers in the garden. It's optional. What do you want to pick? Imagine every flower is another mitzvah. No one's forcing you. No one's forcing you to volunteer to make dinner for a family that needs it. No one's forcing you. It's optional. And you know what? In the optional is the hardest place to make decisions. It's crazy. If you tell me yes, just tell me what to do. To make the decisions. To make the decisions is a killer. If you just tell me, it's so much easier. Just tell me what you want for dinner. Just tell me.
Right.
The 50%, the hardest part is to decide what to make for dinner. To get the ingredients into that.
Right.
It's easier. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Exactly.
But now you leave it up to me. Do you want the pink dress? Do you want the purple dress? Oh my goodness, now what am I gonna do? So there's a lot of those handheld games. I don't know what they're called. You're this little menschie, and there's all different treats and different things that you could get, right? It's Pac-Man or whatever it is. Okay, whatever it is. What do you want to pick? What do you want to pick? It's optional. There's some things that you can't do. If you crash into the whatever, then you're out of the game. But there's some things that's optional. The more you get, the more points you get, or whatever it is. But so think of mitzvahs as a beautiful garden with 613 different types of flowers. It's all open there before you. You have to make a bouquet for Hashem. What kind of bouquet are you going to bring? What kind of a bouquet? It's optional. But in the optional, when you choose this flower and that flower and how to put the flowers together and whatever it is, and to make your bouquet more and more bigger and beautiful.
Elevating the mundane.
Yeah, elevating the
Right?
mundane.
Let's say you're
Exactly.
cooking, right? And just putting a little bit more into it. Cooking anyway.
That's the concept of a hiddur mitzvah. I could light a menorah with tea lights, right? Or I could light Shabbos candles with tea lights. Or I could go the extra mile. I can do it in a more beautiful way. That's the beauty of the relationship is seen, not just you must do this, that, and the other, but the beauty of the relationship is seen in in the optional. I never saw it that way. I thought the mandatory, that's, that's the big stuff. But what's really bigger
Is Monday.
is when you choose on your own, not because it was forced upon you.
But the Mishnah says, "Gadol ha'mitzvah v'osem she'eino mitzvah."
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
the other way.
right.
So
Because when you're forced, then
they're Yetzer against it.
then Yitzhar is against it, exactly. So there is how you want to look at it.
That way.
Yeah, I want to look at it.
The big way either way. The big way is this one or that one. Okay.
The rest of the days to eat matzah is optional. It's not a downgrade. It's opportunity. I love the word opportunity. I love the word opportunity. Yes, thank you. I love that. I love that opportunity.
The way it should be, but we don't appreciate it because it's like the name. So get inspiration from their eyes, from the fresh eyes.
It's one of the, right, it's more special,
Yeah.
you think.
It says it's biblical in the Torah.
Right.
You know?
It's more, I never heard that we don't eat matzah all those days.
We don't have to.
No, we're not
You don't
obligated.
have
You don't
It's not
have to,
obligated.
it's not obligated.
We're not allowed to eat hummus, it's really the commandment.
Right.
It says clearly about not eating hummus, matzah.
No, it doesn't say not eat. You're not obligated.
You're not obligated.
Obligation
Not
is only the
obligation.
first night. That's why.
I'm saying, but I'm saying.
First and second, no, just first.
Just the first. I mean, the second is only a full.
Full,
Yeah.
right, only.
Yeah.
They say that eating,
Night is,
the eating matzah on the first day brings amuna, on the second day brings refuah. It's wonderful to eat matzah.
Yeah, yeah. Matzah is lechem hamuna. Is the food of the
Lechem
moon.
hamuna.
Yes. Yes.
Very nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bonnie, what's day 7 as far as Pesach, or what is day 7?
Malchus,
Malchus.
kingship, which is the feminine energy. The obligation to eat matzah does show that a person must work on getting rid of his ego. When eating matzah is optional, we know that he already achieved humility and he has trusted that on his own he can grow.
Mhm.
You know, my son called from yeshiva. Okay, in yeshiva, there's no devices. They had a speaker come and tell them all the terrible things about the internet. Calls me on the phone, he says, "Mommy, when I'm coming home, change all the passwords of all the devices, I'm not touching it." And that's amazing. When you're in yeshiva, a device is not an option. When you come home for 3 weeks, okay, then it's an option. But for a child to say, "I am not touching a device when I come home from yeshiva," that is a higher level than not touching a device in school, because in yeshiva there is no, you don't have that choice. No one gave you that ability. Okay. So you could truly grow when it's from your own, when no one's looking. On your own, you say no, I'm not touching a device. Just like on the last day of Pesach, we reach a state where we eat matzah shruya, so too there's an advantage on the 7th day from the beginning of the Geula. It is called atzeres, which means to stop and marinate in Hashem only. Matzah is optional because into every Jew, the revelation was absorbed already. So when we say atzeres, stop, when we're saying the 7th day is a higher level than the first night of the Seder. Why? Atzeres, Hashem says, stop. Stop means let's absorb, let's marinate all all the revelations that came until now. So just like matzah shruya, there's an advantage to the wet matzah over the matzah that's not wet, because matzah shruya shows that you're on a higher level. Same thing, the 7th day is higher than the first day. Why? Because from the beginning of the Geula, that was the first day. 7th day is higher. Why? Because it's atzeres. It's time to stop and marinate in Hashem. And the revelation, it means it's a time for the revelation to be absorbed, which also it was revealed on the first day. By the 7th day, it's already absorbed. The revelation is already absorbed inside of you. It's atzeres. It's stopped. It's sitting inside of you. It's not in one ear and out the other. It stops. It stops inside of you. It stays inside of you. And that is the advantage of the seventh over the first.
So wasn't there has anything to do with the creation of the world? Like in the 7th day, like God said, like 7 is a very.
6 days you should work, and the seventh you should rest.
I don't know, but it's just.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely connected.
Totally.
It's absolutely connected. For it's interesting. 6 days you should work. 6 days you eat matzah. It doesn't say for 7 days it's it says 6 days you eat matzah. The seventh is a day to absorb it. 6 days we work. 7th day is a day to absorb Hashem's holiness, to stop running, to stop the marathon, and to take in Hashem. That's the 7th day. Absolutely. Okay. Now we're going to take 7 and 8. I'm going to show that 8 is greater than 7. Till now we're saying that 7 is so amazing because from here we learn about that it's that's opportunity, that it's optional. The 7th is greater than the days that come before it. Now we're going to talk about 7 versus 8. However, 7 represents revelation from above, while 8 represents refining ourselves below with love. As soon as the Yidden left Egypt to count on their own, the Yidden did initiate to receive the Torah that is so great. The counting of the Omer doesn't begin on the first night of the Seder. It begins specifically on the second night of the Seder. When is that complete? On the 8th, not on the 7th. You finish refining the whole week of the first Midah only on the 8th day. And so 7 is still Hashem revealing. The revelation of Hashem is absorbed inside of you. 8 represents your work.
You say 8 is really 7, kind of, whatever.
8 is 7 from day 2.
Yeah.
So 8 and the Yidden, in the Torah it says Usfartem lachem, you should count for yourself. The mitzvah Shir Saimer is in the Torah, but the Yidden only received but before the Yidden received the Torah, before they saw that in the Torah it says you should count for Saimer on their own, from their own initiative. The second they got out of Egypt, they started counting 4 or 9 days to get to Matan Torah. So counting shows on our work, our efforts. 8 represents our work, while 7 still represents the revelation from above.
So that's not why we put it in Israel, because they were already fully after.
Right. So they have a lot to do. That they have the Mashiach said on the 7th day, and they have to.
So they start day early. They're not done for weeks.
Right. So there's different opinions. If you are in Israel, do you keep 1 day of Yantif or 2 days of Yantif? There are different opinions.
People do 2 days, and it's not.
If you're an American born,
Well, America.
and if you live in America and you come to Israel just for Pesach,
You're Israeli.
okay.
You want.
So people
They
who
don't do
live.
the Matzah Shvoya. They don't do that, but they have the redemption of Mashiach.
They do that, I think, from what I remember. they do.
I never
No.
saw.
No.
I never
Those that don't eat gebrox, don't eat gebrox on the 7th day.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, they do something different. That's what I asked people earlier. People that eat gebrox, do they do something different?
No,
on
say
the
people
Saturday?
that don't eat gebrox over here on the 8th day will do, right?
Right.
In Israel, there is the 8th day. We don't eat gebrox in Israel. We don't eat gebrox 7 days. And then it's the
Look, in Israel, it's even a higher level. In Israel, they're eating chametz on the 8th day.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tuesday, she's Moroccan, she has a separate, right? This is
Yeah,
separate dish.
7 days we do it.
There's a
It's
separate
Moroccan.
dish on the 7th day. or something?
They do it in Israel.
What
Okay.
is the difference?
It's a Moroccan minhag, yeah.
It's a Moroccan.
No,
Why? That's
Moroccan, a lot of
Moroccan.
Moroccan, they do a
What
lot
is
of
different than
Ashkenazi.
what they make?
Yeah, but I'm saying that the people that don't eat Shvuya, the Hasidic people don't eat Shvuya in Israel,
Don't
there's
think,
no-
don't think.
and the Moroccan is a different minhag. But we don't have the
Oh, they always.
Okay.
How don't eat that dish?
No, but they don't eat it the whole. They don't eat well, in the old country, we didn't eat, but in Israel today we do, but in the old country.
Okay. The first day of Pesach is the day of joy of Moshe Rabbeinu, while the last day of Pesach is the day of joy of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Acharon Shel Pesach culminates the first redemption, but to mark the final redemption is its key dimension. So Acharon Shel Pesach, the 8th day of Pesach, it says Pesach, Acharon Shel Pesach. So it's still connected to the 7 previous days of Pesach. Yes, Acharon Shel Pesach is connected to the redemption of Pesach, but also the main thing, Acharon Shel Pesach, it represents Not just that we were freed from Egypt, but it represents the 8th day of Pesach, specifically represents the future redemption. On Acharon Shel Pesach, a revelation of Mashiach's light does shine. The Haftarah that we read discusses what will happen in Mashiach's time. At a third meal, the Baal Shem Tov would dine. He called it Mashiach's feast and would eat matzah and drink 4 cups of wine. Okay, so I don't know how many of you know this, but from the Baal Shem Tov's time, on the 8th day of Pesach, it's Mashiach's light is shining, and besides for the regular Su'udas Yantif that we have, as it comes Mincha time, after Mincha, we sit down, we wash, we have matzah and 4 cups of wine, and this represents the Mashiach Su'udah, a festive meal for Mashiach. 8th day is when the light of Mashiach is shining, and we even read about it in the Haftarah. Yeah. Everyone could do it. Okay. There's a difference between the 2 manners of redemption that we see. About the exodus from Egypt, it says that the people had to flee from Egypt's evil and impurity. The Yidden remained in that state until the 7th day by the splitting of the sea. Okay, so what's the difference? Okay, regarding the final redemption, there will be no existence of evil and impurity from which we will need to flee. The light of Mashiach will shine brightly. There's a big difference between the redemption then and the redemption that's going to be now. Then they had to run away from the impurity. When Mashiach comes, the impurity is going to be eradicated, and we're not going to have to run. We don't have to run. I was reading this, and I was like, Israel is safe. We don't have to run. You don't have to run anywhere. The impurity itself is going to be destroyed, and is going to disappear. It's going to melt away. The impurity is going to melt away. Well, by Mitzrayim, we had to run away. Now we don't have to run. The impurity has to run away. The impurity has to disappear. Israel is safe. We could stay where we are. Once the impure spirit does leave, Ishapcha we will achieve. Ishapcha means the transformation, where you could eat the hot dog with all the toppings and the ice cream and everything else. The evil inclination will transform into goodness. Any concern for matzah shriya will be joyfully transformed into holiness. We won't have a worry. Oh, the matzah, maybe it's going to turn to chametz. We're not going to be worried about it. There won't be any evil. There won't be any chance for haughtiness and for negativity, for any of that. It's all going to be transformed into holiness. This concept, I said this already, this concept is emphasized in halacha when the end of Pesach draws near. In a case when a person's meal extends until after 3 stars appear, even if he didn't yet make havdalah, to eat chametz, he is permitted, even though later on in benching, on this day of the festival of matzahs, will be recited. So in the Chabad custom is that you could say Yalav Yavai and add the part that we say about Pesach, even after Pesach is over, even if you didn't, you could even have chametz on when you're in that last meal, the transfer between Pesach and the rest and the rest of the year. On the differences between the 7th and 8th days, we had a discussion. So basically we're going around a complete circle. First, we spoke about how great 7 was. Then when we take 7 and 8, we're saying that 8 is so much greater than 7. Now we're saying, from a more general perspective, we're going to put the first days on one side of the scale and the second days on the second side of the scale. You may think the first days, the Seder, that's the most important part. But now we're going to see if I break it up to that way, the first days and the second days, we're going to put the 7th and 8th day together, and let's see what we learn. On the differences between the 7th and 8th days, we had a discussion, but generally speaking, between the first days and the last days, there is a distinction. The last days represent the era of the final redemption, especially since in Israel, Pesach ends on day 7 when the Mashiach meal is eaten. So in Israel, we only have 7 days. So all this Mashiach, anything that relates to the future redemption has to be packed in to the 7th day. So what I was going to say is when I was in seminary, I was an American girl in seminary. So there are different rabbis that you could ask. Some people keep 2 days, some people keep 1 day. So the Hasidic interpretation is that, I learned this with my principal, that in Israel, all the lights that need to come down, because when every year Pesach, what's happening? We're tapping into spiritual lights that are available that day. So in Eretz Yisrael, which is the Holy Land, all the spiritual lights and revelations can all come down in one day. In Chutz La'aretz, you need 2 days to draw down all that light. So it's about the place. It's not about you. It's about where you are versus who you are. So.
Sorry.
So when as an American girl actually I wasn't in Israel for Pesach, but if I would have been, or if for Sukkot for Shavuos I only kept 1 day, because all the spiritual energy comes down in Israel in 1 day, so 1 day is enough to keep.
Wherever they are, you do whatever.
And some people have a different approach, which is to. Oh, I just lost it. Sorry, I was trying not to. Almost done. So we have to. So for those that are only keeping 7 days, everything, all the great stuff that we're talking about in Mashiach, all those lights have to come down on the 7th day in Israel. Okay. And now we're going back to 7. We're showing that 7 is really great, because in Israel, all the lights have to come on that day. Only at the splitting of the sea, which happened on the 7th day, only at the splitting of the sea was the klipa of Egypt nullified completely. You see, the Jews were free from free from Egypt, right? Day 1. You think it's wonderful. They were free. That's the most amazing part. But when they were free from Egypt, but they were still petrified of the Egyptians, especially once the Egyptians started chasing them. So the ultimate celebration is not on day 1; it's on day 7, when all the Egyptians were drowned. That's the amazing thing, because what happened? They were never seen again after day 7. And all the sparks were elevated and became holy, and even maidservants saw what prophets didn't see. When the Jews left Egypt, they left with a lot of spoil, a lot of riches. But from the spoils of the Egyptians that were spit out from the ocean after the splitting of the sea was more. They got more gold and silver and precious stuff from the spoils of the sea than they got when they left Egypt. So the advantage of the 7th day is that they didn't have to be afraid of the Egyptians anymore. All the klipa, the shell, they broke the shell of Egypt on the 7th day when all the Egyptians were destroyed, and they were able to get all the booty, all this gold and silver and everything. Specifically on the 7th day is when, you see, the gold and silver is not just gold and silver. Gold and silver represents elevating the sparks inside the mundane. They finished their mission when? On the 7th day, when they walked away, with all the gold and silver, elevating it, taking it with intention of they're going to use it for the holy temple. So everything was completed specifically on the 7th day. And also but specifically by Kriyas Yamsuf is when even the maidservants, even the most simple Jewish people, were able to point and say, Zek Heli Vandeyu. They were able to point with their hand and say, this is God. It was so, Godness was so revealed to them that they were able to point to it. They were able to see more than what prophets were able to see later on. This form of bittul resembles the removal of the impurity and the elevation of all the sparks in the world entirely, which will happen with the coming of Mashiach speedily, when earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem, as water covers the bed of the sea. So all this is mirrors what happened on the 7th day, mirrors what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, the klipa will be destroyed forever. And all the sparks, not just of Egypt, but all the sparks of the entire world will be elevated. And we will have the knowledge of Hashem will be revealed to us like the water that covers the bed of the sea. So kamayim liyam machasim. So right now under the ocean, there's a whole world. There's a whole world in the ocean that we can't see. The water covers over everything. So this world is considered Olam Disgalia, the revealed world, and what's going on under the sea, that's considered the hidden world. When Mashiach comes, everything that's hidden is going to be revealed, and the world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem. Okay. I know it's way over time, but this is,
That was such,
yeah,
so
we're-
much information,
I
but
know.
we have a lot of days to think about it.
yes.
So, yeah.